You can't see me, but I'm wearing an awesome Single Tracks hat right now. It's actually the reason my voice sounds so amazing. Okay, so maybe not, but you never know until you get a hat for yourself. Go to shop.singletracks.com to find Single Tracks hats, t-shirts, stickers, tubular headwear, and can coolers. Shipping is free within the USA, and your purchase helps support the Single Tracks podcast. That's shop.singletracks.com, and thank you for your support. Hey everybody, welcome to the Single Tracks podcast. My name is Jeff, and today my guest is Otis Guy. Otis started racing mountain bikes at Repack in the late 1970s and competed at the first mountain bike world championships in 1990. He's also been a frame builder since the 1980s and currently works as a youth cycling coach in Northern California. Thanks for joining us, Otis.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff.
Well, so you started out racing road bikes, I believe, and helped start the Velo Club
Tamalpais. Yeah, for me, cycling was always a passport to freedom. Mm-hmm. So I got my first bicycle when I was 5 years old, and I had my parents take the training wheels off it right away. My uncle had a grocery store in downtown Santa Fe. My father used to come home from Hamilton Air Force Base, and he would follow me to the elementary school over this little hill on my 20-incher. I'm surprised he still had a clutch in the car. And once they were confident that I can ride to school and back, I was allowed to ride everywhere I wanted to. So I would ride down to downtown Santa Fe, ride up in the hills and everything else. So for me, cycling was always a passport to freedom. Mm-hmm. And then later on, I started racing in 1971 and was part owner of a bicycle shop in Sausalito called Mom's Apple Bikes. And I met a man named Joe Breeze, and we hit it off right away and we're racing together. And later on in October of 1973, so we're racing on the road all over Northern California. Mm-hmm. And we're very much into old bikes, which meant real old bikes. Like I worked a whole summer for free at a bicycle shop in Santa Fe in the mid-70s to earn an 1881 bike that I still have that's at the Marin Museum of Bicycling. So in October of 73, a man named Mark Vendetti, who was a little bit with the Larkspur Canyon gang and knew about the old clunkers that people were riding on Mount Tam, introduced us to mountain bikes. And that's when we started riding these single speed, pre-World War II Schwinns because they had high bottom brackets, mm-hmm. and also setting pin, dropouts. So allowed you to adjust the chain very well and keep it in a good spot. And that was our ticket to Mount Tam. So I've lived in my entire life with a place with a view of Mount Tam. So it's a very special place for me. Yeah. And that was the beginning for us of mountain biking.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, what was your interest in old bikes at the time? Like this is before the Schwinns.
Just because of the beauty and the ingenuity and, all the advances in cars and everything else. These people were bicycle frame builders or designers. The first ball bearings was made by a bicycle manufacturer. So just, the beauty of old bikes, the 28-inch, single tube tire bikes, wood rims, the high wheelers. Joe and I went to the Santa Fe Historical Society and found old pictures of the Santa Fe Wheelman in 1898. Oh, wow. Of course, we couldn't get the photos, copied because we were both going in there with long hair. And so my mom asked me what I wanted for a birthday gift. I said, I'd like these 3 pictures, get copies of. And my mom went there, and the older women there then did allow her to make copies of these photos. And I still have those photos. Wow. So they weren't being cooperative with us. They didn't let us look in the books and look through stuff to find old cycling stuff. So just always into bicycles. Like I say, passport to freedom. Rode to high school, got a merit badge for us cycling. I remember calling my mom from Point Reyes, mm-hmm. When I was like 12 years old on like a 50-mile bike ride just to check in, to, make sure I was still alive, on my, I think that was probably a Schwinn varsity then. So this is Breeze, Vendetti, all of us were into bikes forever. We weren't going to start just driving a car and abandon bicycle.
Yeah, sounds like you were obsessed. I mean, like, was it the historical nature of those bikes, or I mean, how did they ride? Like, were they fun to ride, or was?
Oh, the high wheel. I have ridden it around Paradise Drive. It's very interesting. You don't realize how low the trees are on small roads because I was 6'6". I'm probably shrunk down to 6'5". So you're pretty high up on those bikes. It's just fun. Just the craftsmanship, the workmanship with what the tools they had to use. It's just bicycle history is very fascinating. So it was all good.
Interesting. So what was it about riding off road that appealed to you? I mean, it sounds like it's kind of in the same vein. You like different things, different bikes and exploring places. I mean, is that what it was? Was this like a new world for you riding off road?
Well, it was more to do because we rode off road, but you're just on your own with whatever your 20-inch bike or even just a 3-speed. And we used to ride our road bikes with silk tires up, the railroad grade Mount Tam regularly in that different area. Mm-hmm. But remember the roads were much smoother because they were not bicycles and there was not suspension. The suspension begets more bumps. So, as time went on, we started riding the mountain bikes from braking and everything else that would cause more bumps, but just a way to enjoy the mountain. Those were also the drought years in Marin County when we had a severe drought. So for us, these bicycles were, you're not riding silk tires. You're not riding a 5-speed bike that you have to maintain. You just can ride these old Schwinn's with a Moro rear brake pedal hub, and simplicity, not worrying about flats, and riding on all these great trails all over Mount Tam. So it's what's not to like? It was like the best way to get out there. And then I started working at the fire department in late 1974 and 75. I was hired there for San Selmo Fire Department. Mm-hmm. And Joe and I were always into bicycles as transportation also. And that was why we tried to, break the transcontinental record twice in 76 and 79. So if you can get across the country in 11 days, why can't you go to the supermarket and get a quart of milk? So that was also part of it. But drought years, also there was a man that was killing people in the Bay Area called the Trailside Killer. So nobody was on Mount Tam. So we had it all to ourselves. So it was pretty nice.
Yeah. You weren't worried about running into the Trailside Killer?
He killed people at trailheads. So when we get to like trailheads, we just hit it hard on the bikes and then just keep going. He was usually killing people that were, was a couple. Even in the old days, we used to go out to Point Reyes National Seashore and ride those trails out there. And I keep seeing the same car in the parking lot and be like, this car's been here for like 3 or 4 months. Well, that turned out to be a car of a couple that was murdered. I was like, okay, well, I'm not a ranger and I'm noticing the car there. How are you guys not noticing this? Anyways, they finally did figure that out and did find the poor couple.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, so we've heard a lot about the early mountain bikes and how those compare to today's bikes. I'm curious too about the early trails. Like, what were the trails like that you were riding on Mount Tam back then compared to some of the purpose-built mountain bike trails that people are building today?
Well, the trails were, if you saw us wearing, we did not wear flannel shirts, Levi's, and hiking boots when we rode our road bikes. So the reason we were, in garden gloves, the reason we were doing that was because the trails were really not much more than handlebar width. Mm. This is the time of Jim Fix, who put out the running book to really get people to do stuff more outside and running on trails. Mm-hmm. So people did not exercise or embrace the outdoors to such a wide extent. Mm. So the trails were not well maintained. And that's, if you bibbled, you went into the manzanita. And many times, like Joe's over the handlebars with his head, stuck in the manzanita, and I'm yanking him out by his ankles, to get back on the bike. So it was very different. You're not on suspension. Mm-hmm. We really learned our foot position really well because you could not freewheel. You could not move your foot back because that's what made the bicycle stop. So we had a fixed foot position. It really allowed you to learn how to move your feet and control the bike that way, but keep the same place. So it was really high skill level, and we're young. So we're going down all these, pretty good little rock drops and stair drops. And we were making them all the time. In fact, the first American journalist, Owen Mulholland, to cover the Tour de France, wrote an article in Velo News, and he compared us to, asking for forgiveness from the Lord, because if we did a dab, we said, dab here, dab there, like our confession, because the whole goal was never to put your foot down.
Yeah. Yeah. I bet that was tough on those trails. I mean, it sounds like they weren't built to be easy. I mean, was the challenge, was that part of the fun as well?
Yeah, that was part of the fun. And also just to, we did know the trails from hiking there as kids and for me and the Boy Scouts, but, we still brought trail maps, and that a lot of trails were not well marked. And when we first found Kent Trail, we did that 8 days in a row, because there was this absolutely cool trail with these big stairs, and both Joe and I cleaned the stairs the very first time we went down it. So we were just, it had more to do with what you'd have to do an all-day hike. We could do it on these bicycles in 2.5 hours. And to enjoy Mount Tam, to enjoy the views, off-season training from racing road bikes all, spring through the fall. This was our wintertime fun. And then also we realized these bikes, most people don't want to be on drop bars with skinny tires. Why not be with an upright bicycle and a comfortable saddle and an easier bike to ride? So that was where, working at the fire department, these old guys that could care less about cycling, thought these bikes were fun. It's like, okay, we have kind of normal people that don't care about bikes that kind of thought, hey, this would be a fun bike to ride. That really piqued our interest, not just for mountain biking, for just regular riding.
Yeah. Well, tell us how you got into building bike frames.
I was with Joe. Joe took a frame building class from the premier American frame builder by the name of Albert Eisentraut. Who for us was, in a sense, the Eddie Merckx of frame building. He built Joe and my first tandem that we used in the '76 trip, and that we won the Davis Double Century for 4 years in, and in the 5th year we used the Tom Ritchie bike. So Joe took the second class with a frame builder named Mark Nobilette. So Joe built his first bike there. Joe's history, his father was the first man. He raced in the first sports car race in America, and used to bring in old MGTCs, and he had a complete machine shop. It used to be at a place called Sports Car Center. And when that went away, he brought the machine shop to his house. So Joe has a beautiful Italian lathe and was always into that, and took a machine shop class at College Marin. So his first bike he built at Albert's class, and the second bike he built was for me in the road bike. And the third bike was for Mark Vendetti. And later on, I was helping Joe do frames, clean tubes, and that type of stuff. And I got tired of working in bike shops while at the fire department. I had my own ideas of frame building, sloping top tubes, steeper angles, and I wanted to express myself artistically. And I started building frames in 1982. So I've been building frames for 40 years now.
Wow. And so, I imagine a lot of these were mountain bikes too. Did you kind of evolve your designs over time, and
far more road bikes in the beginning, more mountain bikes, later on. Actually, I'm the only person to race in Repack and actually win a Repack, and race in the first national mountain bike championships in 1983, and race in the first UCI World Championships. And even in I had already built myself a mountain bike in '83, but I used I got one of the 10 breezers that Joe made after he made his original one that's at the Smithsonian. And I used that breezer in that race, and I actually used a prototype Height Right, the very first one made. That was like a very, ugly looking piece of square aluminum with a wrist spring and, on the seat post. And so I wanted to have the first, modern mountain bike, be in the first national championships.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, I have one of those Height Rights that somebody tracked down, and yeah, that's such a cool thing. The prototype dropper post, basically, for those who don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think as a frame builder about sort of this current trend towards slacker mountain bike head tube angles? Is that a good development, or do you think we're getting too slack?
I'm the wrong person to ask, since I only ride my own frames. It certainly is working. People are winning world championships. For me, I like a bike that moves more. But, now with the advent of a very large suspension, you do need something that goes slower. It was more like, well, you've kind of gone back to the bikes we rode. The first modern bike built by Joe was off my 41 Schwinn because that was the best handling bike, with this like a 67, head angle, so they're more down to those ranges now. So it's kind of entertaining that they've gone back to these like, dead Schwinns head angles, but it certainly does work. But I like a bike that's more aggressive. But again, remember, I'm riding my own bikes. They're not, I don't have licensed technology for rear suspension. So I'm riding a Thai bike I built with like, a 120 fork or, a 140 fork and, access, dropper seat post and, access, 1x12. So with 2.4 tires. So I'm the wrong person to.
That sounds like a really modern bike though. I mean, yeah, it doesn't sound like there's anything wrong with that.
Or it is, but it's still got a 71.5 head angle though. Yes.
Oh, wow. Interesting. That does sound different.
I like things to react when I move.
Yeah, that's cool. So let's talk more about some other mountain bike innovations. The pro mountain bike team you managed was reportedly the first to race full suspension cross-country bikes. What were the race courses like in those days, and how did full suspension help?
I think the full suspension helped. It was still early, with rock shocks. And I first saw the soft ride bikes at the first World Championships, and I tried a couple of them out there with other guys from Washington, and then soft ride heard that, so they sent me a beam and a top tube, and I didn't even commit to building a frame. I cut the top tube out of my regular mountain bike and threw it in there to check it out, and I liked how it went. And I used this. I actually did that with a rock shock on the front that Turner gave me to use in the Worlds, and I really liked the way it worked. But that still was a transition. I like that it really had. You didn't have to worry about pivots. You were suspending the rider, not the bicycle, and so I'd say it was more of a very early bridge. I mean, I would think most people now kind of look at the soft ride beam and think it would be laughable. Mm-hmm. But it did work very well and was definitely smoothed out the bumps and made a big difference on cross country races. And I actually, gave Bob Roll his last pro contract, and he raced for me in soft ride for his last couple of years as a professional racer in anything. He raced the U.S. National Road Championships on a beam road bike I made him. And then he raced for 2 years for me, I think probably like 96 and 97, on a mountain bike that I built with a beam and then with the suspension stem, like Dersnes won 2 world championships in Vail and I think Bromont.
Yeah. Fascinating. Well, so you talked about riding a tandem with Joe Breeze, and there's a mention of 2, and I'm putting this in quotes, 2 attempts at riding a tandem from San Francisco to New York City in your Mountain Bike Hall of Fame induction bio. So tell us about that ride. Did you guys ever make it to New York, or was it just attempts?
We never did make it. We got to the first time we made it to Lincoln, Nebraska in 5.5 days. Okay. So our theory proved to be wrong. Our theory was more that you went really hard for 18 hours and then you slept 3 to 4 hours, then went again. And that's proven not to be the case. It's better just to keep riding forever, even if you're riding slower, and really kind of go for the sleep deprivation. But we were more going for being racers and thinking that was the way to go. Joe was far more talented of a cyclist than I am, but in some senses he did not necessarily prepare as well as I did. And each day he was having more troubles with his knees, and he had 2 episodes of gout, and that so he had to quit both in 76 and 79. But it was really fun to do it. It got a lot of attention for cycling. And it would have been great to make it across the country in like 10 days, but we did not make it.
Man. Well, tandems are always, they're kind of fascinating to me because I don't understand, like, is there efficiency to be gained by having two people on one bike, or would you be stronger, like, if you guys each had your own bike?
You're much better on the downhills and on the flats because you just have more power.
Okay.
Where it would be run into stuff is more going up hills. So, Joe, there used to be something which will still exist, the Davis Double Century or 200. And in the early days, that was run as a race also. So it was a mass start and they kept times and they had a winner. So Joe and I heard about that when we were preparing to do the cross country trip. And so in 75, we went up there, and what we decided to do was hit the early hills, like, pretty much like 90%. Mm-hmm. And where all the other, top, George Mount was in the race, Pringle, a bunch of great racers, Mount, 70 in the 1976 with, got 6th in the Olympics. And we hit it hard enough to make the single bikes uncomfortable. And then we, at one of the tops of one of the early hills, attacked over the top and took off, and were able to hold them off. But when we had some, our going down Mount St. Helena, we were using soaps in that year, and it was in the rain, but still it's a long descent, and the front tire moved halfway around the rim. Oh. So we had to reposition it, and we got caught by them right before those days they had you stop for an hour for lunch. And then in the second half, we dropped them going about 65 miles an hour down to descent, faster than they wanted to go, and were able to solo in. So we won that race, 5 years straight. And I think our best time was like 8 hours and 59 minutes.
Wow. Did you ever ride tandem bikes off-road?
Yes. My second wife and I, Laurel Doremus, won the tandem mountain bike national championships in 1993 at Big Bear. It was actually a male national championships. And one person was not letting her come up to the podium because she was a woman. But it's like, well, we actually won the race. So it's like, that's how it goes. Yeah. But yeah, it's really fun. I did, Laurel and I did a lot of rides with, Dave Weens and Susan Dimitaille on, Mount Tam on Troop 80 trails. And the tandems, you can get those things going pretty darn well on the downhill and on trails.
Yeah. That sounds like a blast. Well, these days you run a series of youth mountain bike camps in Northern California. And I'm curious, though, how did you learn mountain bike skills yourself? I mean, as being one of the first, real mountain bikers, how'd you figure it all out?
Just by doing those trails. And we were all good bike handlers, very good, very fast road riders, and very good, Breeze, Venditti, and I were extremely quick descenders. So, we weren't any slouches. So, I mean, if you're good at, doing it on the road, you're going to be good at doing it at mountain biking, and we're just having fun. So again, not being able to, free will your foot back and stuff, really learned us foot position that really, I think, really helped. For me, a lot of it's really steering with the pedals in a sense. That's why, clipless pedals are so nice. We transitioned with toe clips first, but that's, really being able to move the bike over that way, really helps. So it was just a natural, if you're a good road descender, you should be able to become a good, mountain bike descender. Like, Peter Sagan was a, world championship junior on the mountain bike, and he became an extremely good road descender. So it would still go the opposite way also.
Yeah. Well, so tell us a bit about the camps. What's sort of the focus of these youth mountain bike camps?
Well, I was a firefighter for 33 years. I retired back in, 2007, and I started teaching local fire departments emergency medical services. So I'm still an active paramedic. And, I kind of realized that I could make a more of an impact by teaching than necessarily just by doing. And with my boys, if you take your kids out, by themselves for a bike ride, all they do is complain the entire time. And we had a couple local families on Christmas Eve. We would take the 3 families and take the kids out for a bike ride, and we'd be doing this. Well, the kids didn't complain. They're all talking, not thinking about riding up the hill, not complaining. This is too hard. I have to get off my bike. This is the worst thing ever. Why are you making me do this? Like, oh, you're killing me here. Yeah. So from that thought, I'm like, I'd like to, see what I can do do something fun. And also it was, for me, a lot of the mountain bike camps, they load them in a van and take them different places. Like, I don't want any 12-passenger vans. Mm-hmm. We're going to ride out of Fairfax and we're going to do different trails and we're just going to have fun. So I've been doing the camp since, I think 2009 or 2010, mm-hmm. and have about, 180 to 200 kids a year come through the 6 weeks. And, it's very funny because the parents in the early years, they'd roll up with the kids' bike and with their lunch. And I'm like, oh, are you doing the camp? Well, you're welcome to the camp. You're going to have to sign up and everything. Oh, you're not. Well, they're doing the camp. They can bring their own bicycle in. They can carry their own lunch and their own helmet. And then the kids would be like, what time is it? Are you launching an IPO today? Do you have a conference call? Why do you care? And it was just learning. The kids just stress themselves out. It's like, we get there when we get there. It's the summertime. Just have fun. And I'd give them also part of the history of the area, or just look where we are, in Marin County, the views, the beauty, everything else. And I incorporated one of the things I did when I was a kid. We have these things called the inkwells at Shafter's Bridge, which is water from Paper Mill Creek and also from Kent Lake. And there's a couple little inkwell pools. Our last day would be the Queen Stage. It was like a 25-mile day. We do half dirt out there, and everybody would get to go swim in the inkwells. And then, no towels needed, just air dry and ride back. So it just have them have the Tom Sawyer experience. Have them just have fun. So it's been really fun. Both my boys have helped me since they were small, and now one has dropped out. Sterling, my older one, who's turns 25 soon, is still helping me out in the summertime doing it. So it's been kind of a family affair with the two boys and myself, and we just have fun.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, is it just fun, or are you trying to trick these kids into getting a little bit of fitness and maybe learning some skills? Or
oh no, we ride a lot. The parents are all amazed that we probably average about 18 miles a day.
Wow.
And, Sterling is really good at I learned a lot from the pandemic. We now split up we have two distinct groups. Mm-hmm. So we have different rides before. Sometimes we mix the groups together. Sometimes we might come back early to Fairfax. Now we just stay out, and we don't come back till just before we go to a local ice cream shop called The Scoop, for this really good ice cream. And then we're done. So, Sterling has had the kids do probably and these are 10-year-olds do 3,500 feet of climbing in a 26-mile ride that was a high school ride, is able to coach them through the day. So we build the kids up little by little. So, and we also read the room. If the whole group looks tired, we just adjust the ride. Mm-hmm. But it's amazing. The kids, remember, they're low to the ground and they're pretty tough. They do very well.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it sounds like you're kind of recreating your own experience with bikes as a kid. And, when you were describing that at the beginning, I was thinking, man, kids these days, I mean, most parents these days wouldn't let their child go out and, ride their bike to school at 5-6 years old, or, just kind of explore around. I mean, do you think, is that the issue? Is that parents aren't going to do that on their own? And so this camp kind of allows them to feel comfortable with that?
I think that does help. It also does help is very good because the kids, they'll learn the routes. And I remember one of my first or second year, I think we did 1 week, and then we're at the park and we see this parent come by, and they're her 9-year-old son took her for a 2.5-hour mountain bike ride. and she said, I could hear your voice, and I was like, watch out for this ditch here or whatever. And the kid, here's this 9-year-old kid took her all around Mount Tam on a ride and knew where to go. She was like, I couldn't believe it. It was yeah, they know where to go. Yeah, things are different now. I lived in, I think, a much simpler time when you had, you left the house and you didn't come back till it was dinner time. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely different now. I think those days were much better, and let the kids go out and do stuff and explore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of things being different, how do you feel about sort of the current state of trail access? in the Mount Tam area for bikes?
Oh, it's very painful because here, like, Mount Tam, in a sense, the birthplace of modern mountain biking. Remember the first mountain bike? Was the first bicycle because it was dirt back then. It's always funny to say, who
Yes.
invented mountain biking? It's like, well, the first bicycle? Wouldn't that be inventing mountain biking?
No roads. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there were no paved roads. Anyways, that's a whole nother subject. But in those years, you just had the old hiking groups that were on Mount Tam, at the Alpine Club, at the TCC, and that had their little groups that did it. Then the running boom happened, and the hikers hated the runners running on Mount Tam. And then when we started riding the bicycles, we supplanted the runners and we became the bad people. In those years, though, people rode horses all over Mount Tam and actually helped maintain the trails. That generation died away a long time ago. I rarely see horses anymore. Just those groups really were very anti-bike. So in some senses, we're kind of one of the worst places. And I'm not sure if you're aware, we opened a museum in Fairfax called the Marin Museum of Bicycling a few years ago. And in a sense, that's not only to show the culture, the history, and everything cycling, but hopefully another brick in the wall to remove this to give us better trail access. And Marin County Bike Coalition, Access for Bikes, IMBA in the past, they're doing a lot of work to try and get trail access. So we do have trails right behind my house at the Boy Scout camp. That's like an 8.5-mile loop. The Tamarancho Trails has been around for a long time. Marin County Open Space or Parks made a very cool trail, Ponte, off of Chicken Shack, off of Queenstone. That's an incredible two-way, single track trail. So it's happening little by little, but you have CEQA and the environmental, impact reports that sometimes make things very difficult to make happen. So as modern times come through, everything's a lot more difficult. And one person can say, you can't do this, and they can stop everything from happening. So hopefully someday that'll change. Just because someone complains on Nextdoor doesn't mean you shouldn't do something, so
yeah.
It's very tough. I've been going to watershed meetings since like the mid 70s or probably early 70s. So there has been progress. I'd say high school mountain biking has really made a huge difference in that progress. Getting more people out there, getting the parents that do the riding to be more involved and really having these people see these high school riders or middle school riders out in groups to really see how important this sport is and the access for everybody is. I think that's something that's really helping break down those barriers and also is introducing a lot of people to the passion and love of the sport. And it's, you can't be playing football when you're 40 years old, but you still can be cycling. So NICA has really made a huge difference. And I'm the director of the Mountain Bike Hall of Fame for the last few years. And when I talk to people internationally, they've heard of NICA and they've heard what they've done and are extremely impressed, with that organization.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great to have that younger generation getting involved. And then I would think too, it helps that, you and Joe and a lot of the other folks there, you all aren't the long-haired hippies anymore. I mean, you're the establishment, right?
Well, I don't have any hair, so I'm certainly not long-haired. Right. Well, I'm not sure how establishment we are, but,
yeah.
I'd say it's just,
you're older now.
We're way older, but we're again, we were never giving this up. This is our deal. Cycling is very important to our life. Being outdoors is important. Bicycles as transportation is important. It's the most efficient form of transportation in the world. So keep it up. We're not going away.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, what's one thing that you want today's mountain bikers to know about the history of mountain biking and our sport?
It came from the passion and the fun to ride a bicycle. And to always keep that in your mind. And also what you learned in kindergarten, treat other people like you'd like to be treated. NorCal, early mountain biking, the high school mountain biking and the school I coached at started something called the Spirit of Howdy. And that is when you see somebody, say howdy to them. And I would train my athletes when I coached high school mountain biking, is to you see somebody going while you're going on fire with us hiking, you should be going a speed that you can say hello and they have enough time to say hello back. So just keep with the passion, share the trails, and be nice to people, and all works out well.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, Otis, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us and filling us in on the history of mountain biking. Really appreciate it. Well, you can learn more and see some of Otis's creations at otisguycycles.com, and we'll have that link in the show notes. That's all we've got this week. Talk to you again next week.